It was a rare quiet evening in the Musk household. No ringing phones, no emails buzzing in, just the soft hum of music playing in the background and the sound of rain tapping gently on the windows. Elon Musk sat on the couch, unusually relaxed, flipping through a sketchpad of designs his youngest daughter, Nova, had been working on. She was just 9 years old, but her curiosity and creativity reminded him of himself at that age. Restless, inquisitive, and quietly rebellious. Nova walked in wearing one of his oversized SpaceX hoodies, dragging a blanket behind her. She climbed up next to him, her face thoughtful, her eyes filled with questions. "Dad?" she asked in her soft, curious voice. Elon looked at her, sensing something deeper than usual bedtime questions. "Yeah, kiddo." She hesitated for a moment. "Did you ever fail? Like, really fail? Not small stuff, but big things." The room fell silent. Elon stared at her, caught off guard. Of all the questions she'd ever asked, about space, rockets, Tesla, Mars, this one hit different. It wasn't just a child's question. It was a door opening to something personal, something buried. "Why do you ask?" he said, trying to keep his tone light. Nova shrugged. "I tried to build that robot today, the one we saw in the museum. It broke. I felt stupid. And then I thought, do people like you ever fail? Or is it just kids like me?" Elon felt a lump in his throat. He put the sketchpad down and looked into her eyes. "You want to know if I ever failed?" he said, almost repeating her words to process them. She nodded. He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "More than you can imagine." She blinked, surprised. "Really?" And just like that, Elon knew this wasn't a conversation to end quickly. It was time to open a part of his life he'd never really shared. Not with the world. Not even with himself. "Okay," he said, settling back into the couch. "Let me tell you a story. A few, actually. They're not the kind you'll find in interviews or books. These are the ones I usually keep locked away." Nova pulled the blanket over both of them. She was ready. So was he. And that's when he began. Elon took a deep breath, the past rushing back like a cold wind. "I grew up in a place called Pretoria," he began, his voice lower now. "It's a city in South Africa. Back then, it wasn't much like what you're used to. The world felt smaller, heavier. I was the quietest boy in school." Nova tilted her head. "You? Quiet?" He chuckled softly. "Oh, incredibly quiet. Books were my best friends. Computers were my second best. People? Not so much." He paused, eyes drifting off for a moment. "School was hard. Not because of math or science. That part came naturally. But the kids, some of them, they were cruel. I used to get shoved into lockers, punched during recess, called names I wouldn't repeat. I remember one day, they pushed me down a flight of stairs. I couldn't breathe when I hit the ground." Nova gasped, clutching his hand. "I didn't tell anyone. Not even my parents. I thought if I just stayed invisible, I'd be okay. But you know what?" He looked at her. "Even invisible kids get hurt." She nodded slowly, sadness in her eyes. "But here's the thing, Nova. Every time they knocked me down, I went home and escaped into books. I read about space, energy, technology. I dreamed of other worlds, of better futures. I built rockets from scraps. I even coded my first game when I was 12. Nova's eyes widened. "That's so young." "I know. But those were my little victories, my way of fighting back without throwing a punch." He paused, then said something he hadn't admitted out loud in years. "There were days I thought I was a complete failure. That maybe the world didn't have a place for someone like me. But I kept going, Nova. Not because I thought I'd be great, but because I didn't want to give up." He looked down at her. "You know how people say failure is a stepping stone?" She nodded. He smiled gently. "My whole childhood was that. One big, rocky path full of failure. But every step mattered. Even the painful ones." Nova leaned against him, quiet for a moment. "I think I would have liked that quiet boy." Elon's eyes softened. "He would have needed a friend like you." They sat in silence, the rain now heavier on the windows. The moment felt heavier too, like something sacred had just been shared. "But that's just the beginning," Elon whispered. "The real failures came later, when everything was on the line." Nova looked up, eyes wide again. "You mean, after you became famous?" He nodded. "Way after." Elon leaned back, as if preparing himself to dig into a wound that had never quite healed. "Before Tesla, before SpaceX, there was PayPal," he began. "But back then, it wasn't even called PayPal. It started as something else, X.com. A company I built from scratch." Nova squinted. X.com? That sounds like a superhero name. Elon laughed. "I thought it sounded cool, too. It was an online bank. Way ahead of its time. People thought I was crazy, putting banking on the internet in 1999? But I believed in it." He paused, his smile fading. "But not everyone believed in me." Nova's smile faltered too. "I hired people. Some were brilliant. Others, not so much. As the company grew, we merged with another startup run by a guy named Peter. That's when things started to change." "Change how?" Nova asked, leaning in. Elon's tone darkened. "I got pushed out. Ousted as CEO. While I was away, on my honeymoon, no less, they held a secret vote and replaced me." Nova's mouth dropped. "What? They fired you? But it was your company." He nodded slowly. "That's business, sweetheart. Sometimes, it's brutal. I built it, led it, sacrificed for it, and still got removed. I felt betrayed. Powerless." He looked out the window for a moment, lost in the memory. "I remember sitting in a hotel room that night. Everyone thought I was rich and successful. But inside, I felt worthless. I had failed, not just as a leader, but as a visionary. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't trust me to finish what I started." Nova's voice was soft. "Did you cry?" Elon looked at her. "I didn't. But maybe I should have. Instead, I buried it. Told myself to move on. But that pain stayed. That failure, being rejected by my own creation, it haunted me." He turned toward her again. "You see, Nova, people look at PayPal and think, 'Wow, what a success!' But they don't know the part where I was pushed out. They don't know how much it hurt to watch from the sidelines as someone else took it where I dreamed it would go." She looked angry now. "That's not fair." "It's not," Elon agreed. "But it taught me something important. If you don't control your vision, someone else will." He leaned in closer. "And so, when I started Tesla and SpaceX, I promised myself I'd never let go of the steering wheel again." Nova nodded slowly, taking it all in. "You failed, but you didn't stop." "No," Elon said quietly. "I failed, and that's why I didn't stop." Elon's face grew more serious as the rain outside turned into a soft drizzle. The room seemed quieter now, like the world was listening too. "There's something people don't know about chasing impossible dreams," he said slowly. "They don't just test your ideas, they test you." Nova was curled up under the blanket, completely still, hanging on his every word. "After PayPal, I had money. Not the billions people talk about now, but enough to try something insane. So I did. I wanted to build rockets. I wanted to go to Mars." Nova smiled. "That's not insane." Elon smirked. "Try telling that to everyone else in 2002. People laughed at me. NASA didn't take me seriously. And when I said I was starting my own space company, most investors thought I'd lost my mind." He looked down for a moment, remembering. "But I believed. I gathered a small team. We started working on our first rocket, the Falcon 1. It was tiny compared to what NASA used, but it was ours." "And did it work?" Nova asked, hopeful. Elon hesitated. "We launched Falcon 1, and it exploded. Mid-air. Millions of dollars, years of work, gone in seconds." Nova's eyes widened in horror. "Oh no! But we didn't quit. We learned. We rebuilt. We launched again." He paused. "It exploded. Again." Now Nova looked almost heartbroken. Twice. Elon nodded. I still remember the silence after the second failure. I was sitting on the ground, staring at the ocean where the debris had fallen. Investors started backing out. Reporters mocked us. People whispered, "Maybe Elon isn't as smart as he thinks." He exhaled. Tesla wasn't doing well either. Our electric car prototypes were delayed. We were burning money. I had to choose which dream to save. Nova whispered, "That's awful." I had a decision: shut one down or put every last dollar I had into both, knowing they could both fail. He looked at her with calm intensity. I chose to risk it all. I sold my house, borrowed money for rent, and put the final millions I had into one more launch, Falcon 1, launch number 3. She held her breath. The countdown was terrifying. Everyone was silent. I thought, if this one fails, it's over. He leaned in. And it worked. The rocket soared into the sky. We had finally done it. And you know what happened then? Nova's face lit up. You got rich. He laughed. No. We got a contract. From NASA. A real one. $1.6 billion. That saved SpaceX. He placed a hand over his heart. But I wasn't happy. I was exhausted. I had nearly lost everything. I had failed, and only barely made it through. Nova stared at him, stunned. Sometimes, Elon said softly, you have to walk through fire to find the stars. Elon glanced down for a moment, almost as if he could still feel the concrete beneath him. People see the Tesla cars now, shiny, fast, beautiful. But what they don't see, he said softly, is the pain it took to get there. The nights I didn't sleep. The floors I lay on. The hopelessness I fought with every breath. Nova was silent, her fingers gently tracing a line in the blanket. This was around 2008, Elon continued. SpaceX had just barely survived. But Tesla, it was dying. Our first car, the Roadster, had issues, big ones. Delays, production problems, people saying electric cars were a joke. He rubbed his forehead. I had already poured everything into SpaceX. But I couldn't let Tesla die. I believed in it. I believed the world needed it. But banks didn't care about belief. Investors were fleeing. We were days away from running out of money. Nova looked up. So what did you do? I stopped going home, Elon said simply. I moved into the Tesla factory in Fremont. I slept on a thin mattress, right next to the assembly line. Sometimes, just a sleeping bag. The floor was cold, the noise constant, but I didn't care. If my team was working 18-hour shifts, so was I. Nova frowned. But you're the boss. Exactly, he nodded. And if the boss isn't willing to bleed for the mission, why should anyone else? He took a deep breath. There were nights I cried. I didn't let anyone see. But inside, I was breaking. My marriage was collapsing. My kids hardly saw me. And I didn't know if anything I was doing would even work. She whispered, "Were you scared?" "All the time," he admitted. I'd sit on the factory floor at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this worth it? I could have retired after PayPal. Bought an island. Lived easy. But I chose this fight. Nova leaned her head on his arm, quiet, listening. And one night, Elon continued, a young worker came over and asked me why I was sleeping on the floor. I told him, because I believe in what we're doing. And if this company fails, I want to be the last one standing. Nova closed her eyes. That's brave. He smiled faintly. It was stubborn. But sometimes, stubbornness saves dreams. He sat quietly for a moment, lost in thought. The truth is, Nova, I didn't build Tesla with genius or money. I built it with desperation, failure, and cold factory floors. She squeezed his hand. I think that's what makes it beautiful. Elon looked at her and smiled, this time, fully. You're starting to sound like an inventor yourself. Perfect, let's continue. This chapter shows a different kind of failure. Not mechanical or financial, but emotional. when the world's judgment began to wear down even Elon's steel resolve. Chapter 6. When the world turned against me. Elon grew quiet, his eyes distant. "You know, Nova," he said after a long pause, "the hardest part of chasing big dreams isn't the money, or the time, or the failures." Nova tilted her head. "Then what is it?" He looked at her, voice low. "It's when the world turns on you. When the people you thought were cheering for you suddenly start hoping you'll fall." She frowned. "But why would anyone want that?" "Because," he said, "the taller you stand, the more shadows you cast. People start thinking you're too powerful, too rich, too different. And when they see even a crack, they rush in to break you." He leaned back, folding his arms. "When Tesla finally started doing well, when SpaceX was launching rockets into orbit, I thought I'd finally feel peace. But instead, the noise just got louder." He looked at her seriously. "Headlines twisted my words. People said I was arrogant, dangerous, unstable. Journalists mocked me. Politicians called me reckless. I couldn't say a word online without it turning into controversy." Nova's eyes darkened with worry. "That's not fair." "No, it's not. But it's part of the cost." He paused, then added, "Even some people I trusted, friends, colleagues, they walked away. Said I'd changed. Said I wasn't the same guy." Nova reached for his hand. "Did it hurt?" He nodded slowly. "More than anything. You see, rockets exploding, that I can handle. But people turning cold? That's what kept me awake at night." He took a deep breath. "There was a night, around 2018. I was alone in my office. Tesla was being attacked from all sides, stock short sellers, media storms, angry investors. I was working 120 hours a week. My back hurt. My heart hurt more." Nova listened closely, barely breathing. "I remember sitting there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, maybe I should just walk away. Maybe it wasn't worth it anymore. Maybe the world didn't want what I was trying to build." "But you didn't walk away," Nova whispered. "No," he said, "because right then I thought of all the people who did believe. The engineers working beside me. The families who bought Teslas. The kids who looked up at the sky and saw hope in those rockets." He turned to her. "People will always have opinions. But the only one that truly matters is the one that gets you out of bed in the morning." Nova smiled. "And what gets you out of bed?" He smiled back, eyes soft. "The future." Elon's expression changed. His eyes softened, his posture relaxed, and for the first time that night, a genuine smile crept across his face. "You know, Nova," he began, "people always ask me about the most important moment in my life. Was it launching the Falcon Heavy? Taking Tesla public? Landing a rocket?" Nova leaned in, curious. "But it wasn't any of those," he said quietly. "It was the moment I first held you." Nova blinked. "Me?" "Yes. The day you were born. Everything shifted." He looked at her gently. "Until then, I was fighting for ideas. For a better planet. For innovation. But when I held you in my arms, tiny and warm and new, I realized I had something even more powerful to protect." She smiled shyly. "What did you think when you saw me?" "I thought, I want her to live in a world where dreams don't break people. Where science means hope. Where little girls believe they can build rockets or run companies if they want to." He chuckled softly. "You were so small. You had these big eyes that stared right into me, like you were already studying the universe." Nova giggled. "I still do that." "I know," he smiled. "And that's why I work even harder now. Not for the fame. Not for the headlines. But for you. So that someday, when you ask me what I built, I can say, a future worth giving to you." Nova's eyes welled up. "You're gonna make me cry, Dad." Elon reached out and brushed her cheek. "You know, the day you were born, I promised myself something." "What?" "That no matter how many times I failed, I'd always get back up. Because giving up, that's a luxury you lose when you become a parent. You fight. You endure. You become stronger, not for yourself, but for them. Nova leaned her head on his shoulder. That's why you never stopped. Exactly, he whispered. Because even if the whole world walked away, you were my constant. My anchor. They sat there, wrapped in warmth, a father and daughter surrounded by silence. People ask me how I keep going, Elon murmured. The answer is simple. I think of you. I think of that first cry. Those first steps. And I remember that no rocket, no company, no invention will ever matter more than being your dad. Nova sniffled, trying to smile. You're gonna make me start building rockets now. Elon laughed gently. Then I'll be your biggest investor. Elon sat back, his eyes distant again, as if reflecting on everything that had led him to this moment. Nova, he began slowly, you asked me something earlier, something simple. Did you ever fail, Dad? Nova, who had been quiet for a while, nodded. I remember. He gave her a gentle smile. The truth is, failure was my greatest teacher. And no one really talks about that. People think success comes from being the smartest or the hardest worker. But in my experience, it's failure that teaches you how to rise. Failure that shows you who you really are. Nova sat up, watching him closely. I failed so many times. With PayPal. With SpaceX. With Tesla. I failed publicly. I failed in front of investors, employees, friends. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. I lost money. I lost confidence. And there were days when I thought about giving up. He looked at her, his eyes intense. But every time I failed, I learned. Every mistake, every setback, showed me a better way. It made me stronger, not weaker. It made me more determined. He sighed deeply, as if the weight of it all was finally hitting him in a new way. What people don't tell you is that the road to success is paved with failures. It's filled with moments when you feel like you can't go on. When you wonder if it's all been a mistake. Nova leaned forward. But you didn't quit. Why? Elon smiled, a little wistful. Because of you. Because I didn't want you to grow up in a world where people were too scared to fail. I wanted you to see that failure isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a new lesson. A new chance. He paused, his voice becoming more tender. I realized something after all these years, Nova. Failure isn't a punishment. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a way to grow, to evolve. It's the price you pay for chasing something bigger than yourself. He took a deep breath. And maybe that's what I want you to understand. No matter how many times you fall, no matter how hard the world pushes you down, you can always get back up. You can always try again. And when you do, you'll be stronger, wiser, and one step closer to your dreams. Nova's eyes shimmered. I think you're right, Dad. Elon nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Failure taught me everything I needed to know. And when you learn from your mistakes, you start to see the world differently. You start to realize, you can change it. He reached out, pulling her into a tight hug. You are my greatest success, he whispered. And no failure, no matter how big, will ever change that. Nova wrapped her arms around him. I love you, Dad. I love you too, he whispered back, his heart full. And I'll never stop fighting for a world where you can chase your dreams, and never be afraid to fail.